organizational field and a CTA in the psychotherapy field. And having known Sari for 30 years, we met, I think, a year ago, over a year ago, and started to work on a new TA book. I think you all know that. And the book will appear in spring next year at Routledge publisher. Hi, Connie. It's called On the Edge. So we did a lot of talking over the last year about all kinds of stuff regarding organizations. Hi, Anna-Mona, welcome. And then the Corona crisis kicked in, and I could not visit Sari anymore in her beautiful home in Utrecht, Lombok. You should go and visit her, wonderful place. But we kept on talking about the crisis and what this could mean for organizational life and for management, and developing our thinking around what this might mean when the crisis once is over, what it will mean to managers and employees when everybody goes back to work, etc. Well, all kinds of questions. And we wrote about it in the script. Hopefully you read that article. And then the idea came, what about just sharing some of our thinking? And we are quite interested in your thinking as well about what is going on. There is a lot going on in the society, and if you turn on the news in my country, most of the time it starts with some act of violence or aggression somewhere in my country. So there is a lot going on. So we thought, how about setting up 5 seminars and just share what we were thinking and ask you to share your thinking about what is going on and what's new.
Yes. So our objective is really to share our best thinking now and to create a community of thinking around this post-crisis leadership recovery after trauma. The webinars, you've all got the planning in there. It's always on the same link, so you don't have to think about which link to use. It's always on this link. We will always be in here a quarter of an hour beforehand. So if you have any questions, you can ask us then, or you can WhatsApp us if you have questions in between. So that's very possible. We will record all the sessions with your permission. We will not record personal revelations that might occur during these webinars, but we will record whatever is public and more theory or more sharing that's possible to record. The WhatsApp number, I will create a group. So if you all send me your telephone number in the chat, then we can set up a group and we can continue chatting with each other in between sessions and share our inspirations and whatever is coming up for us because of this webinar. There are, the idea was when we started thinking about these webinars, we had this really strange, strange revelation, like we want to do hope, love, and belief in the future. It's in Dutch we say geloof, hoop en liefde, which is more like linked to religion, but we meant it in a post-crisis world. How can we create hope, love, and belief in a future? And I think really the webinars started from that. We started thinking on the basis of those 3 ingredients, what can we offer to other people that might inspire their own thinking and their own recovery? We do, the subtitle of these webinars is Recovery After Trauma, because even if you have not been sick, or even if no one in your environment has become sick, we do believe that all of us collectively have gone through trauma. And you notice it because people are really, really tired. And it's not just because of recovery from work, because you had more time, or it's not just because you've had to change all your work. There's something that's going on profoundly in our society, which we want to address. We don't have a lot of rules, really. I don't think neither Anna or I really believe in rules in groups, but we do have some principles. So while we do the webinars, we'd really ask you to mute yourself and to keep your video on, even if you have to walk away, so that we know you're still there. We like presence, even if we're absent in the flesh. We really like spiritual and mental presence during webinars. Feel free to stand up and walk around. Being on Zoom is very tiring and it's very, very concentrated. So please remember you also have a body and not just a mind, and that you do need to move now and then to promote your health and your concentration. So that's fine with us. We ask you to be confidential about the things you hear in this group. So you can go forth and multiply about your own learning, however you want to. So please speak to other people about what you learned yourself, but please don't speak about other people. Is that all right with you? This requires a reaction. This is a yes. Okay, great. We will, thank you very much. We will start on time. So we ask you to do the same if possible, so that we don't have these ins and outs all the time. It's hard enough to manage a group without, if the boundaries keep changing, it's even more difficult.
And by the way, we will stop in time also.
I wasn't thinking of stopping. I was thinking of starting, but you're right. And the last thing is we ask you to be responsible for your own learning. So if you have questions, if you think we're going too fast or too slow, or you're bored or you're inspired, please let us know during the webinar so we can do something about it. Are you okay with that? And that requires a reaction as well. Yep. Good. It may be that during the webinar, certainly when we talk about trauma and post-recovery, post-crisis recovery, that you may be touched personally, and that's fine as well. This is not just a work thing, it's a personal and professional development thing. So please feel free to share. Let's see, have I forgotten anything, Anne, in our introduction?
Yeah, the webinars will have more or less identical patterns. That means that you will be invited to watch the PowerPoint Sari and I prepared. We will speak, of course, about what you see, and there will be breakout rooms in which you are invited to do your own thinking, to share your own thinking, and to make your own discoveries. So today there will be 2 breakout rooms, if I'm correct, and 2 PowerPoint presentations. And 2 hours is not that much. It will pass very, very quickly. So if Sari and I have the tendency to go too fast, please raise your hand and let us know. Then we will slow down. But there's a lot we want to cover with you. Okay.
There's one last thing. You will each get a Dropbox link. And in the Dropbox, we will share the recordings of the webinars, but also the articles that we found really interesting. Please feel free to send us articles if you have anything in your library or portfolio that you think, oh, this is really important for this group to know. We'll also share the presentations on there. So you will get the Dropbox link through the WhatsApp. So we hope you enjoy that too. The material on there is for use of the people in this group, so please don't use it to train other people, because you can use it for yourself as much as you want to, but still. Okay, is that okay? Is that it? That's an interactive moment. I know it is. This is, yes, okay, cool.
So this might be a good moment to thank you, Sari, because Sari, as you might know, has far more experience than I have in working online. You might notice that from the easy way she talks about stuff, of which I think, oh wow, oh yeah, Dropbox, oh yeah, whatever. And so thank you very much for being in the lead here. So if you have any strokes about the management of the online event, give them to Sari. And if you think I do something specific and brilliant, I'm open to strokes as well, of course.
Oh.
What about getting to know one another a
Peter.
bit? Yeah.
Okay.
So to not use too much time to get to know each other, a short introduction might be in place. So here's what we ask you to do. Just give us your name. We could read that on screen. Tell us your occupation. What are you doing currently in life? And then give a brief, very short answer to this question. Question is, you might want to write it down. What important lesson did the COVID-19 crisis teach you until now? And how did this impact your organizational work? Just some first thoughts. We don't expect you to come up with an essay answer, but just some first thinking. What important lesson did the COVID-19 crisis teach you until now, and how did this impact your organizational work? Take a few seconds to just write down some words you'd like to share with us in a moment. Yeah, you've written down some first thoughts, some first associations. It's good enough. Yeah. All right, so let's start on the left top of my computer with Ateke.
Hi, well, I'm Ateke. I'm starting up my own business in what I will focus on communication development in healthcare organizations. It's a real startup, so I've got my first things to do, and I started it 2 weeks after Corona arrived in the Netherlands.
Good timing.
Yes, absolutely. And the lesson that I learned from Corona crisis is that I think every crisis has an opportunity as well. So I think that the trick is to see the opportunities, and the impact on my organizational work was, I don't know how big it was, because there was no organizational work started. So I don't know, but I think that with my goal to work in healthcare organizations, I think the impact might be great, and there's going to be a lot of work.
I'm pretty sure. And you deserve it. Florence.
Thanks.
So that's better.
That's better, yeah. Now we can hear you.
Yeah. So my name is Florence. I do have my own coaching and consultancy company since now 5 years, and I already did a lot of, I have a portable career because I'm following my husband abroad every 4 years in a new country. So I created a business around coaching online, and in a way, it was quite challenging to do 4 or 5 years ago. My partner is herself in another country, and the COVID crisis in a certain way was really like I really saw it like an opportunity of bringing all the knowledge and the competences we have had really to companies where sometimes it was difficult to be heard before. Like we work a lot with, do you say that in English? Dispersed teams, multicultural teams that are in different countries. So I really see it as an opportunity now to use that knowledge, being myself in that case, and having coached people, to bring it to companies where I thought that they didn't need it, and now most of the people are working from home, so that there is work to do there for the moment.
Yeah, great. And bring in your experience and your knowledge to this webinars in the coming weeks, Florence. It will be lovely. Peter.
Yes, I'm Peter. I work for one of the biggest consultancy firms in the Netherlands as a senior consultant. And I'm occupied with programs on management development, human resource development, and team coaching. And what the COVID crisis taught me is that people are much more vulnerable than we think they are. And I think a lot of personal and group problems came up which were under the surface before. And what it taught me is that in the work I do, I much more pay attention to create a secure base for the people I work with, because I think a lot of people are insecure in the position they are right now and in the the crisis we are in, and don't know how to react in a good manner. So that's what I found out in the work I'm doing. People are more scared, withdraw themselves into their position or to things that they do know, and expect much more from their environment. So I think the lesson is, how can we fulfill that gap which is opening before us? And that's what I hope to.
Yeah, great. Well, you came to the right webinars, that's for sure. Yeah, and I'm curious to hear more about your thinking. We will talk about cohesion and secure base leadership later on in the webinar. So bring in what you know about it, please. Wendy.
I am Wendy Huisman. I work as a consultant, not a TA consultant, but professional consultant in the pharmaceutical industry. The consultancy piece is about the safety of medicinal products, so the balance between benefit and risk, everything around adverse events and risk of medicines, and then the European perspective, European legislation around that, and what a company in Europe should organize to actually guarantee the safety of the patients using medicinal products. I started that about 1.5 years ago. And actually for me it was the other way around, because coming from big pharma, working there day to day at a desk job, going onto my own study, sitting on my own, working for a US company, having only remote contact, started for me about 1.5 years ago, and that was tough. I realized that I needed strokes. I realized that I missed the proper attachment, and I got new sources actually about my private life around, the evenings and the weekends. So that is where I took my strokes. So COVID actually limited that completely. So it was strengthened again. And that has been rough in the beginning, and sometimes it still is. And what I'm seeing is that what I'm looking for in my current work with the organization is one of the organization, the American organization I'm working with, is that actually one of the advantages is that in the beginning, when they were still all at the office, I was having video conferencing and there were 10 people online. So I only saw very small faces, and I saw a meeting room and the desk. And the good thing is that actually with COVID, everyone sitting from home, I finally know now their faces. Before that, I only knew their names. So that was one of the good things. And what I try to do now is having more, although I'm almost sitting full days on Zoom, I'm trying to have more one-on-one contacts to get to know each other a little bit better, to get more attachment. Actually, I learned, although it's difficult to ask for strokes, and what I'm seeing is that I'm becoming probably I was that already, but I realized that I'm becoming the secure base for some people. And that feels good to be that, especially in these times when they are suffering in the US, also the same things we are suffering with. And on the same time, and also see that I'm relying on my own secure bases a lot more in these past months of COVID. So that's what it brought me so far.
Great, yeah. A lot to say about it. We will deal with a lot of what you said in the coming webinars. Thank you, Wendy. Anjana.
Hi, I'm Anjana. I run my own coaching business. I've run it for 13 years. And I've always called myself a leadership coach. And the thing that COVID has taught me is that slowing down is not a bad thing. In fact, it's a really useful thing. And it's helped me to put things into perspective in terms of what is important, as well as the importance of connection, and how much it can affect us when we don't have the connection that we're so used to and take for granted. So I suppose it's kind of made me sit back and think about, well, what's really important here? What's really important beyond material wealth, which I think we've all gone bananas about. What is really important? That's where I'm at with my learning. And what it's done in terms of organizational work, well, one, I'm a lot slower than I have been, which is interesting. But what it's really got me to shift and focus on and kind of be a bit more overt about is leadership well-being. So I think it's really shifted my focus to well-being and how important that is. And actually that's the area that I've always wanted to work in, and I've always shied away from it for some reason. But, you know, I suppose COVID has invited me to be more overt about that. And this week I decided to open my counselling business as well. So I'm not just going to be doing coaching.
Yeah, it sounds great. Keyword is well-being. Yeah, your own well-being and those of the managers and the leaders you're coaching. Yeah, wonderful. Carla.
I'm Carla. I work as a chapter lead. That means I manage people and I do organizational development also. I started my position online, so I haven't met any of my people yet. Which had a big impact. I'm seeing them today, actually, for the first time, face to face. I think what I took away from this crisis is putting things into perspective, being able to have a solid base yourself and refill your energy so that you can deal with whatever is going around you, and the discipline to do it also. And it had a big impact on my work because I just met the people online, so I had to gain their trust to talk about the important things and not only at the surface, and have them trust me without meeting me, so just through facilitated through the computer. So that was for me the biggest challenge.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, we will talk about it later on.
And I'll have to disappear at 5 o'clock just as a in order to meet the team for the first time.
Okay, yeah. I have to disappear. That's interesting. An interesting word. Yeah. Thanks for that warning, Carla. Honey. Honey, put on your
Yes.
mic. Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. I'm Honey, and I work as an interim manager, consultant, and trainer. At this moment, I'm working in public health in Amsterdam and in Utrecht. And what this COVID crisis have taught me is, well, I recognize the part about slowing down, and that it sometimes, and how important it is to get enough strokes, because there is a risk of getting a shortage of it. So that I really had to organize it. And when I look at the impact on my organizational work, as I'm working in public health, we are just in the middle of the storm, to say like this, and that time is quite important. Timing in taking into account what people are going through, and at the same time not stopping developing your organization or your team. I thought that quite a challenge, and it asks very much to be what I experienced, to be present and available. And of course that has a time limit, but it's not, well, it's part of creating a secure base, the way I see it. So I think that's, well, yes, and one thing which I think it's in the organization I work, which is a great asset, that we at once are working digital, more online, also not as colleagues, but also with clients. And well, and now we're in a phase to kick, okay, what do we want to leave when the crisis is over, and what do we want to take with us? And where do we want to make contracts about? That's it.
Great question. Thank you, Honey. Annemona.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm from Poland. I am a psychologist, and I work in the European Union agency that deals with border management and border control. I am head of training, so I'm leading a sector that is dealing with learning and development and quality assurance and provision of e-learning services for our L&D programs. And I think I was saying yesterday to a friend that it seems that COVID, I will mark it as one of the best times of my life in terms of my personal development, because it forced me to stop. Let's say it encouraged me to stop and to really reflect and to be more present with myself and more present with my team. And I actually see that there is more of a conscious leadership emerging and conscious team working emerging, because we have to work online, and because we become aware of how important it is to be connected and to create this balance between the physical distance but psychological closeness. So I can see that I can say that there is an improvement in our team spirit and in really the quality of our interpersonal connection and communication, a bit beyond the limits of the boundaries of the professional, sort of strictly work business related stuff. And of course, someone also mentioned this before, it brought also an opportunity for a better permeability of e-learning and of everything that has to do with working online. Now people are receptive to this scary enemy that is technology. So it became a friend. The monster.
Great. Great. The best time of my life. I'll remember that. We'll come back to that. Katarzyna.
Hello to everyone.
And her little boy.
I've got twins, a boy and a girl, and they are still here trying to understand what you are talking about.
You notice you're watching them. Yeah, that's okay.
So the biggest learned from the COVID time is that the professional contact doesn't have to be so you know, how to say the word. You should be more open for what happens at your home and what your children do, and that you have to combine so many different roles in one place. So this is the biggest learned from the COVID time. But what was the most difficult thing for me during this time, was that I've changed everything, because I was working in a few projects with different people. I am self-developed, however, I work as a trainer, coach, consultant, and they decided not to cooperate anymore because they changed their business model. Yeah, so during 1 month I lost everything, and it was a great opportunity for me to start to sell by myself, to start to find my clients, and I was so surprised by the effect of that. I've got
You're muted, Katarzyna. You're muted. You need to.
Okay, is it better now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so COVID time in the professional field, it was a very good time for me because I started to depend on myself more, not on the other people. The thing which were, I was so sure that I will cooperate with a few people for the whole life almost. I've changed my mind and they changed their mind, and I started to depend on myself. And this is my biggest learn, that I should do this.
That's great. And you started to learn to multitask. So that's what you're doing at the moment.
Yes,
being a participant on the webinar.
You wouldn't like to see what they are doing, really.
No, don't
I
tell
will
us.
finish at the moment.
Andy.
Afternoon, everybody. So I work as, actually this is my 15th year of running coaching businesses and training businesses, and so I'm a chief exec of a group of companies that we're in the training field, group training, I guess, and also in the foreign exchange. We've got a foreign exchange business, and we've got a retail clothing business, and there's a few other businesses that I'm involved with. My personal work is as a coach to female chief execs that are either about to become chief execs or are seasoned female chief execs. I tend to specialize working with, in fact, I don't work with male chief execs anymore, it's all female. So a lot of my work has been involved in business continuity planning with those. So I act as a trusted advisor / consultant / coach / friend to those chief execs and their boards and their senior leadership team. I've found through COVID, because of the work that I've been doing with business continuity planning with all my clients, and I've been doing this for a long time, even the new ones, is it's not come as a great shock that the world has changed, because you can plan for these sorts of things, and we have planned for them. And it's not been a big deal, if I'm honest. I mean, I've never worked so hard. I'm exhausted. I'm absolutely knackered, if I'm honest. This has been the busiest time of my life, and I'm just about worn out. I've aged 20 years with the work that I've not had many days off. I've taken on different projects that I shouldn't have done. I'm like a tart. I just can't say no. But I'm enjoying it. I'm just tired right now. I think the my clients, all of them, have grown through COVID, business-wise. They're all in very, very commercial enterprises. They're not. They have to survive. They're always fighting the sharks, fighting the bears. Highly competitive industries demand a level of expertise and professionalism that you just got to have these days. You can't get away with not having it. And I think with business continuity, it's about what happens if. So they've all had plans in place. Some of them have switched over virtually overnight to go on to line and home working. Others have taken maybe a week to do it, but they've not taken more than a week. All of them have grown their commercial businesses. I've grown my businesses as well. The foreign exchange business, where all foreign exchange businesses have kind of collapsed, we've grown by over 2,000% in this period. So that is a testament to looking for opportunities where opportunities exist and not being really bothered about what's going on around, just looking for the opportunities. So it's been a great time. That team is amazing. It's all remote. They were remote before COVID. They're even more remote now. But obviously tech is very, very important. High tech is very important, and making sure people understand how to use tech, aren't afraid of it.
And not getting exhausted, Andy.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, and that's my problem. That's my problem. I can't say no to anybody.
I hear you.
Yes, you can.
I can hear how
good
you're working for your clients, but I guess the exhaustion is really important at the moment.
Yeah, it is, and yeah. That's something I've got to work on. And I think because I knew something like this was probably going to happen eventually, and kind of swinging in and saying to everybody, "I told you so." But with a good business continuity plan, these things you can take them in your stride. And organisations without those plans now are really struggling. They're really on the back foot. Yeah. So there's some great lessons there about.
That's true. Yeah. Let's leave it for now here, Andy. And so the whole team of Exhaustion will come back later on. Yes. So thank you all for sharing. Sari and I will share with you later. Before I hand over to Sari, take 15 seconds to just see what you learned from all these exchanges, from all these stories.
What are the main themes?
What new stuff did you learn, did you hear? We're not going to ask you to share that, but just to make sure that you don't think that all the learning should come from Sari and me, because you shared a lot. I made a lot of notes. Thank you very much for being so generous. All right, so what we will cover in this webinar is crisis and trauma. And I hand over to Sari to guide you into the world of crisis and what has to do with that. Sari.
Oh, let's see if people are still writing. I don't know. People are back. Whew. Wow, so much experience in the room. This is fantastic. I don't know if I'm going to share later. I think I do want to share now. One of my main concerns at the moment after COVID is I think the main lesson that I take from it is that we have to switch from an individual to a collective focus. And that for some people, for some cultures, that's much easier than for others. That I see a real split socio-politically now between countries and regimes who support individual focus and countries who really think and work collectively. And what I see happening in Holland now, and in the other countries I work in, Serbia, Poland, I've got schools, businesses in 9 different countries, but my real concern is that the split is getting bigger in the world and that we see much more aggression around that split. So I just wanted to share that because I was stimulated by what you all said, but I have given my work in so many countries, I really have a very large concern if I look at what's happening in Hungary at the moment, in the States where I work, or here in Holland even, where I get aggressive reactions if I ask people to wear a mask. There it really is us and them at the moment, which I think would be really interesting to talk about further, given all this experience in the room as well, because what we do doesn't only impact individuals, it impacts organizations, but also in the end, it impacts, I think, hopefully what we do also is like a ripple in a pond. So that's my hope, my almost existential hope as well for this conversation we're starting. Thanks for dealing with all the introductions like this, and I guess now there's a first sharing that I'd like to do. Today is really about two pieces of our input, and then your thinking and reflections on that. My piece that I want to bring in is really about knowing the different levels of crisis and the difference between functional and dysfunctional crisis. So I really want to emphasize that there are functional crises and there are dysfunctional crises. And then Anna, you will talk about trauma and what the impact is of crisis. A traumatic impact can be of crisis. So let's talk about, I'm switching more to a didactic mode now. So let's talk a little bit about this notion of different levels of crisis and the difference between functional and dysfunctional crisis. So Anna, I'm going to ask you to share a screen now. Given that my camera stopped at just the wrong moment. If you put it on presentation, well, yeah, great. If you, maybe you can move it on to...
Yeah, just tell me when to move it.
Yeah, move it.
First one, move it.
You can move it again if you want to.
Yeah, you tell me.
Okay, so you can move it again. You'll get all these presentations and you can move it again. Yeah, one more. Yeah, that's right. To say something about the different levels of crisis, I want to start with what is an organization. And I'm basing this on transactional analysis. So Eric Berne, some of you know Eric Berne's work, TA, and some of you don't. So in any case, it doesn't really matter, because in TA, we really say there are different levels of organization that are at play all the time. So we've got a public structure where we look at the organizational structure, the boundaries, the roles, the power. We look at the individual structure. Can you go one further, I think, Anna? Yeah. The individual or relational structure, where we talk about dynamics, personas, influence, and we talk about the psychodynamic structure, which has more to do with the unconscious structure in groups and organizations, which includes imago, which is the image of the organization you have in your mind. We talk about transference and countertransference, and we talk about personal authority. These three structures will come back more often. So this is, we'll repeat this again and again. What's important in this is that when we talk about crisis, we can talk about crisis at different levels. So we can talk about a crisis at the structural level, which is level, for simplicity's sake, let's call that level 1, where we have an organization or a country or even a family as a system, where you see that the boundaries of the system are impacted, or the hierarchy is dismantled. In that case, we call it a crisis at level 1, which is a structural crisis. And as long as the relationship works and the underlying culture and values stay intact, that you can still work even if your structure is shattered by a crisis. I can't see the people, so I don't really know is this still okay? You following me in that?
Yes.
Okay, great. We can talk about a crisis at the relational level in any system or organization. So the structure is in place. So let's say the walls of your house are still standing, but you're moving all the furniture around and the relationships between people is really starting to shift. In that case, we call it a crisis at level 2. So the dynamics change, the way people fulfill their roles change, the influence in a system changes. And that's a second type of crisis we can have. The structure is still there, the culture and values are still there, but the relationships are all impacted. Okay, is this, you can imagine that. The third level of crisis we can have is really at the level of psychodynamics. Now, psychodynamic crisis is at the level of the unconscious processes in a group or an organization. So that means, for instance, that the image you have of the organization, the imago, the unconscious expectations that leaders and employees have in an organization are severely disrupted. The values are severely disrupted by something that happens. For instance, I had one organization in which I worked with them for many years, but they suddenly found out that their CFO was fraudulent. So he was taking out millions of the business and no one had noticed that. The values and the imago of that image of that organization was severely disrupted because everybody in that organization was tainted by this fraud. The structure was still there. The walls of the house were there. The relationships were still there because the people were still there. But the values, there was an immediate crisis of values. And so we call this a level 3 crisis. Okay. So let's go back a bit. If I can see the people, does any questions about this at the moment? Is this interesting, not interesting? You can imagine this?
Yes, I think it's interesting. And I'm having a question. Is it the way I could understand that you're saying when you're having a crisis in the level 3, the psychodynamic crisis, then that's more severe than when you're having a crisis in structure or in the relationships part, or?
Well, I'd put it differently, but we'll get to that in a second, Connie. The recovery of structure is much easier than the recovery of values.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
something that impacts your psychodynamic level will always take longer to recover from the trauma than something. You can rebuild a structure more quickly. You can even rebuild relationships. Mm-hmm. It's like medium term, but rebuilding culture and values is longer term. So 18 months, 12 months, 6 months, if you want to put it that way. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And also, people are impacted much. Well, no, I wouldn't say that. If I look now at what's happening to the migrants on Lesbos, their whole camp has been destroyed. It's a camp that was supposed to be for 3,000 people. They say 13,000 on the news, but I know from personal experience, because I worked there, was 17,000 people in that camp. And the fact that it's burned down, the whole structure is destroyed of that camp. The relationships, of course, will be destroyed as well, because now everyone is dispersed. And something will happen about imago. How do we see the people there? But it starts with the destruction of structure, so it goes further than that. But it's the first question that I have for you is, can you recognize something that happened for you in COVID at the structural level, at the relational level, and at the value level in your organization? So this is a first, I ask questions just to stimulate your thinking. So we're not asking for perfection or complete answers, but just to stimulate you. So we know that you can differentiate a bit. I saw something in the chat, confusion. What are combined crises called? Construction work?
Sorry, I have a lot of background noise, so I couldn't speak. They are tearing down my bathroom. But what is you
another
said
plumber?
Level 1, 2, 3. That's, yeah. You said level 1, 2, and 3, where you really differentiated between 1 out of 3 is in crisis and the other 2 are okay.
Yeah, we'll get.
Combined.
It's my next slide. We'll get to that.
Okay.
Hold your question. I love your question and hold it. Yeah. The first step is that you understand that there are 3 levels of organization at work, and that you can have different levels of crisis. That's the first stop, if you want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the second stop. Maybe we can do the next one, Anne. So this is maybe an answer to your question, Wendy. So I started my business when I was 22, so that's 35 years ago. And so for those of you who can count, I'm 57 now. So I have helped organizations go through crisis a lot. And what I found in that time, I'm not saying this is true, I'm just telling you this is my experience, is when the structure, the relationship, and the values are aligned, so they're all going in the same direction. And de volgende, Anne. Nee, eentje terug. Most organizations are congruent and in sync and at their most productive. So I'll give you an example. If a leadership example, if the formal leader is also the most powerful influencer in the relationships and also the leader in the imago, in the values of the people, that leader is at his most or her most powerful. If an organizational example, if the roles in an organization are covered by the people in the relationships, if the right people are in the right roles and they are supported by values, you can work at your most productive level in an organization. This is a separate workshop, but this is my learning so far. However, sometimes there's a crisis, internal or external, and these structures are not aligned. And that means that you get a type of crisis. If 1 out of 3 structures is in crisis, you can handle it usually. 2 out of 3, doubtful. 3 out of 3 levels in crisis, the structure falls apart. It implodes or it explodes. The difficulty is, the paradox is, you need crisis in organization to innovate. You need some form of disruption to start something new. A lot of you in your introductions spoke about, this has been a good time for me. I've had time to think about what I want. I've started something new. I realized what was more important for me. So in actual fact, the fact that there was an external crisis like COVID has made you disrupt some of your own life structures, and you've come to something more important, something that's more innovative, perhaps. Sometimes, however, if 2 out of 3 of those levels are disrupted, these disruptive forces are so strong that you can't keep it together. And in that case, I talk about a dysfunctional crisis. So this really the second step in this that I want to take you into is there are 3 levels of crisis possible. You need crisis to innovate, but if you have too much disruption, it becomes a dysfunctional crisis, and an organization, a country, a marriage either implodes or explodes. Okay, can we go back to the people, Anna? Get out of sharing. Okay, any questions, comments so far? Because this is my learning so far.
I have a question. You spoke of a number of crises which can occur. Can you give examples on each crisis you mentioned on organizational level? Because I have not a real view on what can I imagine with each of 3 of them. Yeah. In the cooperative functional crisis.
Let's do the 3 levels first.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, else we're going to mix metaphors. So for instance, in an organization, when you reorganize an organization, you change the structure and the boundaries of an organization.
I can imagine that.
When you do an acquisition or a merger, you change the external boundary of an organization. It's a disruption. And in any case, it's a disruption. When people talk, usually people, when you change processes, suddenly you have to implement quality processes in your organization. But with the implementation of process change, you also change the relationships between people in an organization. It's a disruption. Okay, is that a good enough example? Mm-hmm. Yeah. At the relational level, disruptions at the relational level. For instance, you have people in the group who are the informal leaders, but don't have the formal position. It's disruptive. If the formal leader and the informal leader are the same person, it's cohesive and you're more powerful in an organization.
Right.
If you change, like in Microsoft, one of the projects I was involved in is that we integrated the R&D department with the sales department. We created completely new ways of innovating. We changed the structure, but with that, we also changed the relationships between departments. And because we brought sales and R&D together, they had to do cross-functional cooperation. It was a disruption, but we created much more innovation. That's an example of a positive disruption. Does that make sense? Yeah. At the psychodynamic level, the example I gave of this guy who proved to be fraudulent, the CFO who stole millions, was a clear disruption, not only a shock personally to people, but it was such a breach of boundaries at the value level and at the cultural level that whole imago, the image, the expectations people had of that organization changed. It was traumatic because what actually happened is that the headquarters started to think that everyone in that organization was corrupt. So even if they weren't, it was a complete traumatic crisis for everyone, even those who weren't involved directly. Yeah. For me, for instance, in Hungary, I speak of that because I worked for 27 years in Hungary. So I worked in Hungary when the Iron Curtain went down. You saw an increase of democracy. And then Fidesz was chosen, Orban was chosen, and slowly, slowly, you saw corruption, you saw changes in censorship, you saw all sorts of stuff happen. And after 27 years, I decided to leave. The structure at the surface hadn't changed. The relationship at the surface hadn't changed. But the values of the country had changed so much. There was so much fear in that country that I decided to leave because there was too much, the disruption was negative, let me put it that way, in this case. Yeah. Does that give you an example of how it can be used? Yeah. For us as consultants and coaches, it's really important to know at what level the crisis exists, because your interventions change depending at what level you have a crisis. Does that make sense? Yeah. Also, it's really important to realize that as a coach and a consultant, it's sometimes important to encourage crisis, because if people stay in their status quo, there is very little room for innovation. Innovation is usually on the edge. It's on the edge between disciplines, it's on the edge between inside and outside. And if there's no disruption there, people are never forced to do something different. And all of us have experienced that with COVID now, I think. Okay, so far? Yeah. So the question, can you show sheet number 8 before we go to an exercise, Anna? So to sum up, for me, it's important to know the 3 levels, and it's important to know the difference between eentje verder. 2 verder, yeah, yeah. And it's important to know the difference between functional and dysfunctional crisis. So for me, in my world, a dysfunctional crisis occurs when there's a real breach of boundaries. That's level 1. Level 2, when the cohesion, so when the will for the organization to survive, that when the relationship, the intimacy between people can't deal with the pressure or the agitation inside the system, then it's also dysfunctional. Think of a marriage. This is maybe a strange metaphor, but if you think of a marriage, traditional marriage, 2 people together, and one person has an affair, there's a breach of boundaries. There's a third party suddenly in that marriage. And if there's not enough cohesion between the partners in that marriage, then that breach of boundaries will break the marriage. Does that make sense to you? Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's what we mean by cohesion. And at level 3, a crisis can become dysfunctional when the culture and the values become for those of you in TA, a minus, minus, minus. I'm not okay, they're not okay, we're not okay culture. Or when there's such trauma that people cannot recover, they're so tired that they can't build the structure and the relationships anymore. Okay? Maybe we can go back to the people and I'll give a short exercise. First of all, let's see, I'm going to mind the time. Yes. Any questions so far? Doing okay so far? Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Sari?
Yeah.
I was wondering, when you were telling, I was reliving or re-seeing everything that happened in the hospital that I used to work before my own transition to a pure TA professional. And I was there last week, invited by the medical, of the management team, and they told about the enormous rise in sickness and,
Yes.
and people that
Yes.
are not able to cope. And
Yes.
before it was, everything seemed to be okay. Everybody was working really hard together, like a community that was fighting against the crisis that was coming from outside the hospital. And then
Yes.
that pressure goes down. Is that a dysfunctional crisis in the third level then?
Yes, I think so. I also work a lot in hospitals now, but you're the expert, so I'll tell you my experience. So what I saw happening in health professional organizations is the structure changed really quickly. Suddenly the processes were changed so that people could work together very quickly and take decisions very quickly. That happened in a lot of organizations. Then what happened is the relationships between health carers, which was usually very status sensitive, so different levels of healthcare, doctors, surgeons, nurses, they really got together, everybody bound together at one level to save COVID patients. So at the structure and relational level, what you saw was a disruption which led to innovation. But I believe what's happened now is the values haven't changed around healthcare. Nurses are still underpaid. People are not being, as soon as the crisis is over, really what they're realizing now, the people in healthcare, is that the imago of their profession hasn't changed. And this tension between this really quick reaction at the structural and relational level, but that the imago hasn't changed, that our profession is almost untenable. That's the way I see it. But I look at it as a consultant, so that I see this and I go, this is not possible to have this cognitive dissonance between two levels changing so quickly and one level not.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
I don't know if it's true, but that's how I make sense of it. That's.
I think I need some time to think it over, but I think you're in the right way.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you.
I'll go on with it.
Yeah, tell me later. So the
Yes, I will.
exercise.
Yes.
The exercise. We're going to put you in breakout rooms. And the question for you is, please talk about yourself or your organization. So don't talk about your clients. We're going to do it about us before we do something with them. So at what level, now you know the levels, at what level did COVID impact you? What was the impact at the different levels? And what made COVID in your life, was COVID in your life a dysfunctional crisis or a functional crisis? If it was functional, why? What made that possible? Systemically, I mean. Do you understand the questions? Is it too abstract? At what level did COVID impact you?
Could you repeat them, please?
Level? At what level did COVID impact you? So structural, relational, or psychodynamic values and culture? And was it a functional or a dysfunctional crisis for you? And if it was functional, how come you made it work? How did you do that? That interests me. Because if we know it about ourselves, we can also do it for other people. That's the thing. So 10 minutes, Anne, 15 minutes? What do you think?
Okay.
Let's see if I can unmute you.
Sorry,
No,
I think let's do 10 minutes and then do some sharing in the plenary.
Okay. Are you going to, you're host now, so can you put people in breakout rooms automatically? Make me host. That's fine.
Yeah. How do I do that?
Go to participants. Click on me.
Yeah.
And make me host.
Participants, click on, sorry. You are host.
I'm co-host.
Oh, right, you want to be host. Make host, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. And I still can't do it because I'm not in, I'm on my iPad. Sorry, Anna, you're going to have to do it. I'll guide you through it.
Make it a functional crisis, Anna.
Yeah,
make it functional. Come on, make it functional.
Yeah, so
I'm going to make you host.
So
you
I go to
breakout rooms.
Yeah, I don't have
the option. Oh yeah, breakout rooms. Yeah.
Yeah. And then click on breakout rooms.
Participants assign.
Yeah. Make five breakout rooms and assign automatic. 4 breakout rooms.
Assign 2 breakout rooms, 5 participants per room. So here you go, guys. Ben jij er nog, Sari, of ben je ook in de breakout room terechtgekomen?
Ja.
Ik moet even mijn oortjes opladen.
Okay.
Of personal experience, but on theories, on definitions, on so lot to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Anybody else?
Very much. Enjoyed very much, and I really look forward to more to come. And what I found most interesting is actually that, you know, you cannot blame everything what's happening also in the organizations you work with on COVID. So it would be challenging to see, you know, what is actually the influence of COVID, of what was already happening in an organization, and is maybe leadership now pushing everything towards COVID or not. So it gives me a lot of thinking at the moment. That's nice.
Good.
Thanks.
Any of the people we haven't heard yet? We really want 1 or 2 people.
I think
Florence, ladies first. Andy, ladies first. Florence.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, for me, it was just curiosity. It's like I'm leaving with, I've got so much questions and still so much thing that came into my mind. And that I say I'm happy to be part of the group to create a safe space also where you can ask those questions and to
yeah. One more, Andy.
One more time, Andy. Last one.
Just a comment about questions. I think it would be useful for the next time you do this to ask whether people have got a sort of a smattering of TA knowledge first before they enter into this, because it's going to be very TA based, I would have thought. So I don't know, with the questions that are going to come up, it might be a bit stretching for people that have got TA. You might be get a bit tiresome after a while having to say what. So
Andy, do you have a TA background?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So if anybody doesn't have a TA background and feels stretched, please let us know so that we can use different words and different metaphors.
All right. So here it ends, and we meet one another in a fortnight at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And please take some time to reflect on the questions we gave you.
And to exchange with each other in the WhatsApp group.
To take better care of yourself regarding the effect of COVID on yourself. All right, we will start with that question. In the meantime, take care. Bye-bye.
You're welcome, Anemona.
You want to stay, Anemona? Just press leave meeting.